Hello and welcome to Verbal to Visual. My name is Doug Neill, and today I'd like to talk about flywheels. This is a concept that comes from Jim Collins, whose interview with Tim Ferriss I sketchnoted a handful of months back. And here's how Collins describes what a flywheel is. It's a way for you to think about what are the smart, disciplined pushes that build momentum over time. These aren't just steps that you can check off of a list, but an underlying logic to the momentum that you'd like to build. And I also recently read the short book that Collins wrote called Turning the Flywheel. And here's an excerpt from the beginning of that book that gets to why I want to talk about it today. In creating a good to great transformation, there's no single defining action, no grand program, no single killer innovation, no solitary lucky break, no miracle moment. Rather, it feels like turning a giant, heavy flywheel. And one of the terms that Collins uses there, good to great, is actually the title of a previous book that he wrote about how companies make that transition from good to great. That is a transition that I would like to make this year and in the years to come with the company that I run here, Verbal to Visual, where I teach sketchnoting skills. How to draw out the talks that you listen to or books that you read using simple diagrams, but also some sketched out scenes, along with the words and phrases that will help give context to that visual. And as I was doing some reflection late last year about how I'd like to approach this year, 2020, it was really helpful to dig deeper into this concept of a flywheel and intentionally build out my own, one that I can keep pushing on throughout this year and, if it works well, in the years to come. And I'm treating this video as part 2 of a 3-part series connected to the start of this new year. In part 1, I asked the question, what's essential? What is it that you want to focus on this year? That's the first question that you have to address. This is the second question, the second prompt to build your flywheel. So my hope is that as I share what my flywheel looks like, you might get some ideas about how you'd like to create yours. Maybe connected to the business that you're building, or maybe just connected to whatever it is that you're doing with your sketchnoting skills, how you're applying those skills to your personal or professional life. So with that as kind of the backdrop, let's get into it. First up, a bit of context for my flywheel here. Since I'm just a one-person company here, I think of myself as a solopreneur, which I think has an impact on the specifics of my flywheel. And the specific work that I do is in the realm of online education. I mention that because if you're also a solopreneur or you work in the world of online education, there might be some overlap between our flywheels. And again, a flywheel is this underlying logic of momentum to your work, where the right initial push makes the next push inevitable, which makes the next push inevitable, which then maybe gets you back to the beginning. So the question then is, what are the pushes that you can make in a way that you can't help but then go on to the next push? Here's what mine looks like. I'll start by giving the big picture of the 3 main components of my flywheel, and then I'll dig a little bit deeper into each of those 3 components. Since the skill that I teach here is sketchnoting, for me, the first push in my flywheel has to be engaging in my own personal sketchnoting projects. If I'm not using my own sketchnoting skills on work that I care about, then it's hard for me to bring my full energy to the teaching of this skill. When I am engaged in my own sketchnoting, I inevitably come across ideas that I'm excited to share with others. That's where the next lever on my flywheel comes in. Based on my own experiences and the insights that come up, I build educational resources for others who are also developing and using their sketchnoting skills. It helps that I like teaching. I enjoy making individual lessons like these, but also building full-on courses. And then after I've built those educational resources, I can't help but share them with others. That's the third level here. When I share the educational resources that I've created, connect with other people around those resources, hear about what they're doing with their their sketchnoting skills, see how they react to the things that I've created, and then do some deep reflecting. Inevitably, from the conversations that I have with others about sketchnoting, some new ideas will crop up that I will want to experiment with on my own. And that brings us back to my own personal sketchnoting projects, where I can take what I learned as a result of what I built and the conversations I've had with others and apply that to my own sketchnoting. And that's how the cycle continues. So those are the big picture pieces of my flywheel. And if you work in the world of education, it wouldn't surprise me if yours is similar, starting with your own engagement with whatever skill you teach, following that up with the creation of some educational materials, and then sharing those materials with others and chatting about how it goes. Here I'll bring in another quote from Turning the Flywheel. A flywheel need not be entirely unique. Two successful organizations can have similar flywheels. What matters most is how well you understand your flywheel and how well you execute on each component over a long series of iterations. So it's with that goal of deeply understanding and also executing well on these components that I think it's worth digging a bit deeper into the details. I break down the personal sketchnoting projects that I take on into two different categories. The first I think of as long-term projects. One example in this category is the further development of my Spanish language skills. During the last 3 months or so of 2019, I spent a lot of time studying Spanish in preparation for a 10-day trip that I took to Mexico. And I really enjoyed merging my interest in Spanish and language learning with sketchnoting. I used my sketchnoting skills to deepen my language skills, which made the trip that I recently took that much more enjoyable. So those long-term projects are a place where I can choose any subject that I'm interested in, any topic that I want to explore, and explore it using sketchnoting as a primary tool. The second category of personal sketchnoting projects I call ongoing research. And the organizing factor here is research connected to the work that I do here. I really enjoy learning about creativity and entrepreneurship and learning how to learn. All of those things interest me and benefit me personally. So I think of them as personal sketchnoting projects. But then a lot of what I learn about naturally weaves into the project here where I teach sketchnoting. So this is a whole lot of sketch notes of, where I'll take the book that I'm reading or the podcast that I'm listening to and create a visual summary to help me remember and act on the ideas that I just read. So long as I am engaging in those two types of personal sketchnoting projects regularly, I can't help but get excited about teaching sketchnoting to others. And within this component of the flywheel, there are again two specific applications. The first is the building of online courses. I build about one new online course per year. Right now, I'm working on one called Digital Sketchnoting, which is all about finding the best way to use the tablet and stylus tool combination to take effective sketch notes. It's that tool combination that I'm using to make this video, and I've really been enjoying starting to develop the ideas around that course. And you can actually participate in the development of that course. Check out the links below for more info. The second branch to the building of educational resources are standalone video lessons like these, the ones I post to YouTube. A recent example, how to build a daily drawing habit. What I like about this combination of educational resources is how they kind of balance each other out. I enjoy spending a large chunk of time, usually about a year, developing a new online course, but I also enjoy the flexibility week to week to pick a particular topic or a particular question, explore it, create a video lesson like this one, and publish it. There's a shorter reward cycle with these standalone video lessons that helps keep me going as I also spend larger chunks of time on more of a marathon of creating and launching an online course. It's also worth pointing out that each of these branches contributes to the economic engine supporting my work. And that economic engine is one of three parts of the hedgehog mode, mode that Collins describes, where you're doing work that you're passionate about, you're doing something you're encoded for, which I think of as kind of the intersection of nature and nurture. If you've got all three of those, you're in this sweet spot and you're well set up for a satisfying and sustainable career. I bring up that model alongside this flywheel model because it's very useful to kind of compare the two to make sure that your flywheel incorporates the elements of whatever your hedgehog mode is. Within the third component of my flywheel here, there are a variety of ways in which I share and connect with others around my work. A big one is email, as you'll know if you're signed up for my email newsletter. That's where I share any new educational resource that I've created, and it creates a nice jumping off point for one-on-one conversations. Social media is also a great place to share this work. For me, specifically on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. If you were going to follow along in only one of those places, I suggest that it be YouTube, then probably Instagram, Twitter after that, and then Facebook. But there's also some personal preference involved with that ordering there. Those social media channels are a great place to connect around the standalone video lessons that I share publicly. With my online courses, it's been nice to start to incorporate webinars connected to specific courses. Just yesterday, I hosted the first webinar for that new course, Digital Sketchnoting. And that's always a fun environment to chat with others who are as interested as I am in sketchnoting, to share what I'm thinking about, but also to provide a place where all of the attendees can have conversations with each other and learn from each other. And finally, the newest place where I'm sharing resources and connecting with others around those resources is Patreon. I recently launched a new Patreon page connected to specifically these standalone video lessons, the ones I share publicly for free on YouTube. If you like these videos, you want to support them, and you want access to some bonus resources connected to these video lessons, that's what Verbal to Visual's Patreon is all about. It's a place to share those bonus resources, but then also have conversations with the folks that are making use of them. So I'm enjoying the community aspect that is slowly growing over there, and I hope it continues to grow. So do check that out if it sounds interesting. The cumulative result of all of that sharing and connecting and reflecting is that I'm super excited to then go away and dig into my own sketchnoting projects. And that's how the cycle starts again and hopefully never stops. Even though this is presented as a first this component of the flywheel, then the next component, then the third, on a day-to-day basis, I'm doing some activities in each category. That's what I find to be a helpful habit to build the momentum of this flywheel, to plug away on a handful of these pieces each day, and to help ensure that I'm contributing regularly to each component of this flywheel. I found the app ClockFi to be a useful tool. At its core, it's a time tracking app, but what I like about it is that you can create different categories for different types of tasks. I have created 5 different categories connected to the 5 specific branches of my flywheel. I've got personal projects for that long-term projects category. I've got research for those sketch notes of. I've got one category for course development, another one for these standalone instructional videos, and then a 5th, which I just call admin, to capture all of that sharing and connecting. And it's that app, ClockFi, that I use on a daily basis. Every time I start working on a new task, I use that timer to do it, identify the category that I'm working on and the specific thing. That helps me to focus in on that task. And then whenever I'm done, I hit stop. Often we'll take a break and then jump into the next task. Over time then, I've got a good record of how much time, very specifically, I'm putting into each of these components of my flywheel. One of the reasons I enjoy ClockFi is because of the reports that they create for you on a weekly basis that give this pie chart breakdown so you know where you're spending your time. This is a helpful thing for me to look at on a weekly basis so that I know if it skews too much into one direction one week, I can try to make up for that the next week by contributing to those components of my flywheel that didn't get enough attention. And my goal isn't to have a perfectly even time distribution among those 5 components, just enough of a balance among those to actually feel the momentum that I think will be generated from this flywheel. And at least anecdotally, I I've noticed that on those days when I spend at least 30 minutes on each of those 5 categories, at the end of the day, that makes me feel really good. I can feel happy about the momentum that I've created that day and how I've created it in a sustainable way that sets me up to do the same thing the next day. So I share this framework, my specific example, some of the specific tools that help me put into action these ideas. I share them with the hope that you might be able to take some of them and run with it. If you haven't already, consider building your own flywheel for the work that you do. I encourage you to pick up Turning the Flywheel. It's a nice short book that has a lot of helpful information in it. You might also want to dig into that podcast conversation between Tim Ferriss and Jim Collins. I will link to these things down below. And if you would like to dig deeper into the development of your sketchnoting skills, there are 2 ways that you can do that. The 2 that I've already mentioned here. 1, go check out the online courses that I've created. Digital sketchnoting is the 7th, so there are plenty of others if you're just getting started. And if you've really been enjoying these YouTube videos and would rather connect in a place like Patreon, then come join us over there. There I'm sharing a full transcript of every video, along with some additional downloads and templates to make it easier for you to put into practice the ideas that I share. And as I mentioned earlier, this is part 2 of 3 of kind of this New Year's series. We started with decide what's essential. Here it's build your flywheel. And next it's establish your routine. That's what we'll be talking about in the next video. So stick around. Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for watching.